today, I'm gonna put it out here real quick. I'm gonna try to be funny. Um, I'm gonna try to make it a little lighter, but this is gonna be a little bit of a heavy message, because the reality is that, like, yeah, you might have had a friend betray you or a family member disown you, and that hurts. I'm not. Please don't hear me belittling that. But then you're still the one that lives with you. And so you didn't go anywhere. You had to stay. And there's this confusion within ourselves of the inner self and the outer self, right? There's the inner self that has a whole narrative and monologue, right? How many of us have full conversations with people before we even say anything out loud? Come on. That's what I'm talking about. That outer self then is not, it's not, please don't hear it. I think there's like some words of like, oh, it's just like this mask of who you are. No, there's just the things we say out loud. You have to go through the filter of like being polite and kind and loving. Your natural inner voice is me, right? Like, that's fine. Address it. It's okay. And so you have learned, maturity says, I've learned to censor some of these things in order to the outside self be the true projection of who I want to be, right? That's good. That's the process. But it's a wrestle. It's an everyday. You wake up, you hear the alarm clock. Some of us, we press snooze like 3-4 times. We have a home pod, so we yell at Siri. Siri is not a helpful assistant in our house. She is a disciplinarian. She's like, you need to eat, you need to wake up, like you need to go to bed, like, and turn your TV off. Like Siri is our mom. That's how it works. And so, but you make that decision of, am I going to wake up? Am I going to engage with the day? Am I going to go through? I mean, Monday mornings, come on, somebody. Like you're going to have this wrestle, right, when you walk into it. Some of us better than others. That's okay. Doesn't mean you're better at being a person. Just means you learned this discipline. Teach me, please. I have not learned this discipline. Here, I want to share some thoughts today that may challenge your sense of self. Thoughts that may have formed part of your identity, influencing how you view marriage, career, and the future. I do have a motive today. I aim to make you question some of your beliefs. Some of what you decided is who you are. Because there's a lot that has made you who you are. And I don't think many of us sit down and ask that question. How did I become formed? How did I become who I am? We want to talk about our practicing the way. What we do on Fridays is we're trying to just ask that question and do it through the practices that Jesus practiced. And if we can find him, hopefully we can find ourselves in that. And so I want to, some of these things that have been affirmed in you, ideas your parents taught you to be true, lessons from a teacher that you accepted. I want to address all of these things. I'm not saying I'm right, okay? Hear me. I am not the person with a microphone because this is a monologue. You don't get to talk back. You can, but it'll be awkward. Because it's not the normal format. We could do it later, and it'll work out. We'll do, well, next week. We're gonna do, yeah. Oh, if you want to talk back to me, outside of amen, Pastor, on your seat are cards like this. It's called the Vow question card. It says, I got a question. Write the question. Use it as an opportunity to take notes today, whatever you would like from there. Thank you, babe. Use that. And if something pops up in your head, because I'm not going to address everything, or something about marriage, friendships, community, yourself, God, right there. Next week, Pastor Natalie and I are going to try to answer as many questions as possible. If you don't write questions, two things: either you got it right and you're perfect, and you should be doing the what we're about to do, or you don't trust us, and you don't want to have us answer any of your questions. I don't know. I'll put it in your cart. It's all your fault, not mine. See, trying to make it light. So I want to. I want you to open your heart to this idea about your choices, about yourself. It's this phrase. This is my phrase for 2025. If you want to attach this to yourself, take it. It's this: I might be wrong. I might be wrong. This is a phrase that every time I'm in disagreement with somebody, I am learning to have this be the forefront question that I filter through. I might be wrong. So instead of just stating my opinion, can I just state what I believe to be true, but I might be wrong? And so if we can we go in today's message with a little bit, I might be wrong. Not saying you are. Okay, I want you to chew meat, spit bones. I want you to take this. I want you to wrestle with it. I want you to pray about it. Don't just let me be your faith. Have your own faith life today. But let's answer a few questions. The topic of you is a sensitive one, right? When we ask the question, like, who are you? You are a series of decisions, your emotions, your many, many things. Your good and bad choices, right? That is who you are. There's too many answers to the question, and you are many things. As the psalmist wrote in our opening scripture, you are wonderfully complex. That's the new bless your heart, by the way. And you do something right. You do something dumb. Oh, bless your heart. This is my new one to my kids. Whenever they trip over an invisible object, you are wonderfully complex. I don't think that's what the psalmist meant when he wrote it, but that's how we're going to use it. You are wonderfully complex. Some of us, we love that complexity. We love telling people about the complexity. I have a lot about me. You're gregarious. You're an extrovert. You love telling people. And honestly, part of that extrovertism is you allow other people to express that themselves. Thank you for someone who is half in, half out of introvert, extrovert. Like, I love that. Show yourself, give us permission. But sometimes you tell a little too much about yourself, okay? Like, we didn't need to know what your bathroom behaviors were. You could have just said, I'm sick. And we would have been fine. The other side is your complexity is a nice little box in your mind, right? I put all the complex thoughts here, and then if I opened it up, Pandora's box, right? All disease, all sin is going to come out into the world if I opened up the complexity of myself. Typically, this is dudes, okay? And really, you get a dude to like either have like 3 beers or just open up about anything, and then suddenly the Pandora's box opens up, and you're like, oh, you swear a lot more. Okay, great. It's good to know. Like you are a complex individual. Like so, whatever it is, we're trying to express this complexity one way or another, but we're asking the question essentially our entire lives because we are this ever-changing person, inside and outside. We're asking this question of who am I? Who's ever asked that question? That's a very philosophical question to ask. Who am I? Who are you? Are you your mind? Are you your inner thoughts, desires, worries, and dreams? Are you a soul that puppeteers a physical form? Are you an Enneagram or a horoscope? Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you the ever changing emotions inside your head? And then now answer these questions in the context of who you are to other people. Are you a son or daughter? Are you a job you chose? Are you a husband or wife, father or mother? Are you single, dating, married, or divorced? Are you straight, gay, anywhere in between or outside? Are you American, Republican, Democrat? Are you Nebraskan? Are you a Husker fan? Like, who are you? Right? All of this. In at any given time, you're multiple and none and some and when and how and for who. Can you see that all of this is actually leading us to what we're learning more and more is an identity crisis. We have a major identity crisis, and especially in our world today, where we are more identified with what we do than who we are. It is about what we are to other people. We stopped asking about ourselves. It's this question of who you are. I don't know if anybody's asked that. If you sit down for coffee with somebody and be like, well, tell me about yourself. And the first 3 things somebody will tell me everything about that person's mindset. I do this all the time. As a pastor, we get to sit down with people, we have people over and they ask, and I've now learned the answers I want to be true but aren't my default answers. People go, "Who are you?" And most of the things is aspirational things, who I want to be, right? But then there's the real things of, oh, I'm Natalie's husband, I'm Balin, Rigby, and Marvel's father, and I'm a pastor at Dwell Church. These are the things I've learned that that's my go, and it's in that order. It's in those order that I like people to framework. For me, what I'm learning to do, and I hope you guys can learn a little bit of this too, is all of that is to say I am a child of God. I'm His. I'm His. We're going to come back to that. Addressing or avoiding the complexities, this question of who am I and who are you and all of these things, it is causing this intense identity crisis. And whether you're the one who established those identities or someone put them on you, there is a maturity that all of us need to go through, no matter the age, just the level of ownership is what depends on the age, I would say. A kid is asking the same questions as you are, by the way. They just don't have as much ownership. We're the ones who are supposed to guide them through that. So to the parenting message and all that good stuff. But owning this question, owning some of the difficulties that we're facing in our life is going to be important to who we are and how we are growing. You are the one who made yourself. Yes, there are situations out of your control. You didn't get to choose your upbringing or the choices others made to help or harm you. You didn't get to choose the genetic makeup, but part of owning our lives and having a healthy relationship with yourself is that you still have to choose how you're going to deal with those things. We can't ignore these things anymore. You have to own up to it. Yes, the world is unfair. It is unjust. It is not equitable. It is not equal. It is none of these things. So now what? Now what do we do? Well, let's dive into that. We're not dealing with this identity crisis, and so we're having major mental health issues. The American Psychiatric Association gives us a short list in an article that I can send to you if you would like, but I've kind of broken it down into just a few things here. I'm going to put them up on the screen. If you're like, oh, this isn't me, I'm doing fine. I don't know if anyone's actually doing that. Let me give you a list of what professionals say you're not doing okay. If you're doing any of these things, one or multiple, I'm multiple, by the way. Decline in personal care, sleep, food, or exercise. You basically don't have a regular habit or routine of either of those. Rapid mood changes, highs and lows, tantrums. Those who think adults don't have tantrums, you have more than kids. Because you have autonomy and you think you have a way. Social withdrawal. So not just introvertism, but isolation. You are intentional. People invite you and you don't become a part. You are choosing isolation. People pleasing. So like over apologizing or undeserved guilt. Right? Come on, Nebraskans. Every time you're in Walmart and somebody's kind of in the way, what do you say? Oh, like it's built into us. It's there. Chronic illness, aches and pains, chemical dependencies, sugar, nicotine, alcohol, narcotics, difficulty performing familiar tasks, so loss of initiative or desire, like you just don't have the drive to do the things. Again, you hit the snooze button way too many times. These are more common than you think. Pornography or sex-driven entertainment, illogical thinking, so reality distortion or comparison. Social media is reality distortion, by the way. It's only reality distortion. So it's cool. Highlight your life. And I'm not asking you to air all your dirty laundry. It's just the rest of us understand that's only the highlights, right? Use the tool for what it is. It's pictures. Okay. And funny, I guess. Okay. There's a deep issue inside all of us that causes these kinds of coping mechanisms and life choices and things that we are dealing with. Instead of learning that these behaviors are hurting us, we live in a culture that celebrates these kinds of lifestyles. But these same people with these same lifestyle choices are the ones who are facing the greatest mental health tragedies. And we go, them, there's my example. That's what I should do. I should do what she's doing. I should do what he's doing. I should do what that family's doing. That marriage looks great. They're not doing well. You're not doing well. What do we do then? Great question. Tough questions. If I wanted, I could frame most of this list as self-love or create a scenario in which they're justified. I could tell you, oh, listen, you got kids. You're not going to get 8 hours of sleep every night. Like, come on, it's okay. And what you don't want to address is that your relationship with your partner feels unequal and they get 8 hours of sleep, but you don't. We're going there, okay? Like, and so you're not loving yourself. You are loving somebody. You're loving a kid. You're loving your spouse. You're believing in the future, but there's no love for yourself. You're not treating yourself well, and you're calling it denial, and it's good. It's not. There are seasons in which that happens. It is not a lifestyle. Are you hearing me? Okay. For those of us, we're going to throw cards on the table here. The way that I deal with stress is I eat. So like if I had something stressful, I love go getting a bag of candy or some ice cream. Come on, somebody. Like, and I love that sugar high, that like that little, come on, let's go. And then I don't know, I love it. It's comfort. I love sitting down watching a movie with Natalie, getting like a whole thing of Oreos, which Oreo thins are superior to all other Oreos. So um, she doesn't agree, but I have the microphone. You can get next week. In the Old Testament book on wisdom called Proverbs, the writer tells us the cycle of self-abuse looks like this. As a dog returns to its vomit, so fools repeat their folly. This is the cycle that most of us, I'm going to say most of us, maybe some of us, we've figured out some of these patterns. I feel like I'm on the journey. I feel like I've gotten some of those. I know a lot of your stories. You figured out, but there are things, come on, let's address. It's a disgusting example, by the way. This is gross. The Bible doesn't hold back, but when we revert to these old patterns and habits and repeat them, what the book of wisdom that tells us how to live life, the best possible way to live life, things like save money, love people, like honor people, live with wisdom as a sense of lifestyle, not just a good idea. It also says that doing these behaviors and not addressing them is like vomiting, turning away, coming back to it, and going, well, that looks good. I hope it gives me the energy that I need in order to make it through. You know what it's going to do when you eat it? It's going to make you vomit again. And it says that cycle that then you would turn around and come back and go, huh, I wonder if it's going to be better this time. Maybe it had to pass through me twice. I know it's gross, but we need to address our habits and routines and lifestyles and how we formed our identity in this way. Yum. But I get it. Control feels good. Even choosing the pain and the discomfort and the grossness of life, at least you got to choose it. Letting life pass by us is easier than facing the hurt and brokenness around us and in us. We have a very real problem that we're not addressing fully. We want our marriages to be fruitful, but we won't fix ourselves. We want our kids to obey, but we have no discipline. We want to get along with the people around us, but we won't acknowledge the change in ourselves. Our resistance and passivity in leaving these issues unaddressed is called pride. This is a deep, deep sin. And when we talk about sin, I'm saying what holds you back from feeling the love and glory of God in your life. That you wouldn't have to do those things in order to feel like you deserve to be here. But most of us, our relationship with ourselves and our the way that we're trying to hold our reality together is actually just a deep pride in our lives. Here's what I mean by this. Pride is a hard thing to talk about and address in people because those with a pride issue are too prideful to accept that they have a pride issue. So there's a chance that when you heard me say pride, you go, I'm not a proud person. Well, we still got 15 more minutes. So let me prove you wrong. Because we are. And like every problem, the first step is acknowledging, oh, I have a natural pride issue. I have something that is trying to get this. Everyone on the outside can see it, by the way. But you, the person on the inside, won't acknowledge it because you don't see it as a problem. I'm not talking about healthy pride, taking pride in your work and having a healthy self esteem. I call that true pride. That's good. Have that. The Bible talks about that. Not that you achieved, but God put a blessing in your life that you get to live that out. You don't need to hide that behind God. You can just be proud that He made you the way that you are. That's good. That's good pride. I love that pride. I'm a excellent communicator. I'm very proud of that. And so what's yours? I want to hear that. Tell me that. I want to cheer that on. I love strength finders. I want to go with your strengths, not your weaknesses. However, when the Bible addresses pride, it refers to a self-centeredness that prevents maturity and lacks humility. So again, Proverbs warns of the dangers of pride with this: first pride, then the crash. The bigger the ego, the harder the fall. First pride, then the crash. The bigger the ego, the harder the fall. Unfortunately, since the beginning of time, it has usually taken an intense situation to force us to look outside of ourselves. Adam and Eve find themselves in the sin of pride, believing that they know better of what is good and bad for them than what God has commanded. King Saul in the Bible, Second Chronicles, disobeys God out of a false sense of pride and is too prideful to repent when he's confronted. In the story of Esther, a vizier named Haman believes that his race is greater than the Jewish race and plots to commit an act of genocide. It is only stopped by the miracle act of humility. The devil is explained as an angel who is prideful and believed that he could be equal to God. The Bible takes pride really seriously. And I want to kind of put towards you guys that some of the limits of us learning to love ourselves appropriately and us learning to live with ourselves for the rest of our lives is understanding the conflict of pride that's in our hearts. And it's built all around us to encourage that. And it's one of those. Have you guys seen The Matrix? It's one of my favorite movies because the whole concept is this guy's been living in this false reality, and then his eyes are opened, and he can't help but to see the false reality all around him. And he has a choice of either walking back into the false reality or becoming the hero to save it. As followers of Jesus, we have an option when we walk in here on a Sunday and we hear a message. Am I going to go fall back into the false reality? Or can I be the hero that saves it? Can I be the person that steps up? I love how James chapter 4 puts this idea of how God addresses pride. It says it's common knowledge that God goes against the willful proud. God gives grace to the willing humble. God gives grace to the willing humble. Okay, I want to tell a story today because all this is good in theory. It's a good idea, right? I want to tell my story of addressing pride and addressing how I viewed myself and love myself. I've never shared this story before. So if I'm a little emotional, uh, please walk with me. Know that I'm okay. But this is, I want to talk about something very real. And when Natalie and I started Dwell, we started with the intent that we wouldn't be a church that just talks about good ideas. But we also wouldn't talk about anything that we weren't wrestling with or hadn't overcome. Um, I want to talk about something that I have not overcome, but I am wrestling with. And so walk with me on this journey. This part won't be as fun, but it'll be okay. I've shared pieces of this, but I've never told this whole story. And so uh, in May of 2023, I was in a very difficult place. I was vomiting 2 to 3 times a week in the shower, and then waking up in the middle of the night and doing the same thing. And this happened for about 2 to 3 months. And partly would address it. I'd never told Natalie the intensity of it, but I would claim I had food poisoning and all this stuff. And I wasn't intentionally purging or anything like that, but I also wasn't trying to stop it, and and I didn't know why it was happening, and so there's a lot that was with this. Um, Natalie noticed, and she began to ask me to start to go to a doctor to figure out what was going on. I was overweight. I had zero disciplines in my life, almost in any form, and we were a year into pastoring this church, and in my 10th year pastoring just as a career. It was a weird time. It was a very weird time. I insisted that it was no big deal and that I was just experiencing just food intake problems. I just wasn't. I'm just not. I'm eating too late of meals and my body's full, and so it's just kind of getting rid of the excess. Or I got I had all the excuses. I had a previous eating disorder in my life, and so I kind of knew all the excuses that would get people to stop asking about it. So I just kind of tapped into those things again and all that type of stuff. But meanwhile, in all of this, I was enduring long stretches of extreme depressive episodes. Suicidal threats became a biweekly occurrence as I would spiral into rage and depression. Texting Natalie that I was going to end my life one way or another. Um, sorry. At times, she had to leave work to console me, not knowing if she would find me gone when she came home. These compounding issues reached a breaking point after several consecutive days. Usually, that was a 1 day activity, and there was a series of days where this was happening. So Natalie finally made an appointment for me, uh, and called ahead and said, "Hey, he's dealing with these stomach issues, but here's some other things he's not addressing. He's not talking about." And she kept going like, "Hey, you need to go to this. You need to go to this." I was like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm just sad. This is just hard. Life's just hard. And I'm sorry. I'm apologizing. I'm just being selfish. I'm doing like, I'm trying to say everything to get out of actually addressing what was really going on." And finally, she was just like, "I made an appointment for you. We're going." I was like, "I'll go, but you can't come." Like, and I just want to ask about my stomach issues. That's all I want to talk about. So I went just to talk about that. I didn't know she had scheduled any other part of it. I was just like, "Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be throwing up." And so I went. Uh, uh, my pride was preventing me from truly facing what was happening. I was self aware enough to recognize that I was not okay, but admitting the truth would require me to confront multiple hidden problems and unresolved pain in my life. I knew. I think most of us know. You're smarter than whoever told you that you're not. You know yourself, and you know when you're hiding. I knew. Eventually, I agreed, and so I went. I sat in my primary care physician's office. The doctor prescribed me an antacid and a heartburn medication, the first of what I now call my old man pills. Um, the first of many, I'm sure, that are going to be coming up. Uh, I don't know, I guess, unless I start exercising. Uh, I use humor to deflect. Okay, jeez. After the prescription was set, I gathered my things, thinking the appointment was over. The doctor said, "Before you go, how are you doing? Stomach issues often stem from intense stress, not just diet. You mentioned that you and your wife are planting a church and feeling stressed about money. How is your stress level?" My prideful statement acknowledged the difficulties, saying, "This is what we signed up for. We knew it would be hard." With a skeptical look, like I don't buy your bullshit, he asked, "Eric, if I could prescribe you an emotion, what would it be? Like your heartburn medication, if you could take one pill and feel better, what would it be?" This question surprised me. He seemed genuinely interested, again, not knowing this is what she had scheduled the appointment for. I knew my answer immediately, wished it was possible, but for a long time believed it was just impossible. As tears froze to my eyes, like now, I said, "Happy." I don't remember what happy feels like anymore. I knew I wasn't okay, but for so long, I believed that with effort, things would improve. I just wasn't trying hard enough. I needed to hold it together. This is not what a man does. This is not what a husband does. This is not what a father does. Um, and uh, and to accept it would mean that life wasn't fair. Um, and I didn't want to believe that. I sat weeping in my doctor's office, embarrassed that I, a grown man, admitted that I was not just sad, but deeply depressed. I had pushed this feeling down, covered it up with prayer and community, and never addressed what was happening. My doctor said, "Eric, I can't prescribe you happiness, but I can get you to a place where that's an option. And you have to admit you need help." This was a pivotal moment in my life. I will look back on this moment my entire life. I will tell my sons about this moment. Um, uh, I'm telling you about this moment. I will tell versions of the story. As long as you're here at Dwell, you're going to hear my same old stories. Um, Looking back now, I can tell you the breakthrough in the doctor's office was not just the emotion I displayed or the truth of my situation. Something had to die in me that day, something I never really acknowledged as a barrier to learning to love myself. That day in the doctor's office, I had to confront the significant issue of pride. Yes, I was sad. Yes, I was depressed. Um, but I couldn't address it until I was willing to let my ego die. Turns out what I thought was best for my life was wrong. My pride kept me stubborn and unwilling to accept that there was something deeply wrong in the way I lived my life, and it affected every part of my identity. So I left the doctor's office with an ADHD prescription, something I had been previously diagnosed but never took medication for. I was like, I'll do anything. Like what? Like, yeah. And a week later, I sat in another windowless room, this time with couch, a pillow, and a box of Kleenex, which I wish I had right now. Uh, and Thank you. That wasn't meant to sound passive aggressive, but it did. It's like it was someone else's fault. I sat in an office sharing my story with a stranger who claimed that she could help. I recounted my childhood with young parents, cross country moves, and instability, stories about the beginnings of addictions and endings of relationships. Thank you. I shared the challenge of leaving comfort and a dream job as a pastor at a large church to start a church that is yet to support my family. Most importantly, for the first time, I revealed how often I threatened to end my life, followed by the stories of when I did try. After I finished sharing my story, my therapist asked a few more probing questions, because that's what they do, and to understand how I coped and responded with both the long and short term parts of these stories. And we concluded our first session with her stating, Eric, I'm going to mention a few things that I believe you're aware of, but have not fully realized that you're facing. I feel like we need to consider treatment for ADHD, depression, anxiety disorder, post traumatic stress disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder. It's not very comfortable hearing somebody say disorder over and over again. Great. Um, don't we call that a totaled car? I just go buy a new one now, right? There's, if you went to the mechanic, we got a transmission problem. Like, the whole engine block is rotted. You haven't changed the oil in 2 years, buddy. Like, just get a new one. She said, however, it's difficult to determine the extent to which you are experiencing each of these mental health issues because before we can address any of them, I'd like to begin the process of diagnosing you with bipolar 2 disorder, also known, this is the least emotional thing in here, also known as bipolar depression. So what this means for me, for those who don't know, bipolar is not schizophrenia, which most people think it is. And most people only know bipolar because of Kanye. Um, which God bless him. Due to factors like genetics and trauma, my brain will stop producing the chemicals needed to face difficult situations. And so, especially when grappling with very complex problems. So those with bipolar depression, which we actually have a few others in this church. What if I just started naming people? I didn't know that. Those with bipolar depression face prolonged manic lows without manic highs, leading to lows that last 2 to 3 times longer than the typical depression. If untreated, these lows can cause a psychosis, leaving me unable to distinguish reality from delusion. And studies have found that a little over 50% of people diagnosed with this disorder make suicidal attempts at least once a year. And so it started to answer a few questions. So there was actually a relief, oddly, in being able to like name the demon a little bit. And when I say name, okay, that's another message. Uh, a couple of weeks ago in our conversation about how God wants you to manage your relationship with your spouse, I said there was a season in life where I was not able to make healthy decisions in our home. This was that season. So this was May of 2023. It's February 2025. I've been living with this for a long time now. Worship, you can come up. We'll wrap it up here. You're like, really? Here? Yeah, here. I won't leave you here. I got some other stuff. It's just better with piano behind me. Laura's never coming back. Thank you for playing today. I'm in extreme situation. Okay, I have a psychotic disorder. I have a disorder that messes with my brain on a deep chemical level, and so maybe some of you have other disorders like that, and so you know the difficulties of managing that and learning how to or not managing that, which again I've been there and have been here. But I want you to see the extreme to understand the common. I don't want you to hear my story and go, well, at least I'm not as bad as Eric. That's not why I wanted to share today. Well, we're discovering more and more that everyone, you, me, them, are all facing some sort of mental stress, divergence, or disorder. Everybody. And only, I think these are some of the statistics. I wanted to talk to somebody. If I remember correctly, it's only like 5% of the population seeks counseling or a therapist or a psychiatrist in some form. But 100% of people are dealing with this. The common and the uncommon. This is a lot. And it's no wonder God has very specific words about how you treat yourself. It's almost as if our all-knowing God knew that this was going to be an issue. That in a world that often chooses themselves over him, he would create a pathway for you to choose him over yourself. If you don't feel like you have a problem, do me a favor, close the door of pride, open the door of humility. Ask yourself if you have any unaddressed issues that have deeper roots. Our unhealthy and unmanaged relationships with ourselves cause us to do hurtful things to ourselves and those who love us. There are two types of people who face the hard truth of diagnosis. The first one is mostly seen and done by default. Following my diagnosis, I had faced a decision. I could dismiss it as merely someone else's opinion rather than my reality. I could choose not to take my medication or skip my therapy sessions. I could continue pretending that everything was fine, knowing that it wasn't and it wasn't going to be, and I was going to make it harder for those who loved me. The second is equally as bad. An odd new kind of pride has formed in recent years. We get a diagnosis, or much worse, we self-diagnose because of TikTok, and we take pride in our diagnosis. We walk around with depression and anxiety and social anxiety as an identity to be celebrated, not a diagnosis to address. And if I were to say something, I'm not loving you. No matter which person you are, diagnosis cannot be the end, it's just the beginning. Diagnosis is not prescription. This is why here at Dwell, we don't just present problems. Good news, I'm not going to end today with just problems. I got a prescription for you. You guys ready? It's the prescription that's gotten me through the last year and a half. My disorder is called a lifelong disorder. I can learn how to manage it well. But once my brain decided to create the pathway that this was an option, it's going to exist until the grace of God can heal me. So I've had to look at it and go, this is forever. So now what? Do I make Natalie walk around in fear in our home? Do I give the opportunity for my kids to be raised without a father? It's not an option. Not for me. Today I want to bring you to a place where it can't be an option for you. I don't want you to give up. I want you to take these commitments, these vows to God, to your marriage, to your parents and to your kids, to your community, seriously. This message doesn't end with, I have a bipolar pastor. You have a pastor who has to humble himself daily because he's bipolar. Every morning I take 2 medications to keep myself regulated. I have a primary care doctor, a psychiatrist, and a therapist. But so much more than that. I have a God who loves me despite any of that. Who chose me and opened his arms to embrace every intentional and unintentional thing that I have done. I have no greater identity more than that God calls me his. I want you to learn how to love yourself. This is hard work, but I want you to see how God talks about you. Let me put a few things up behind me. You are his child. You are redeemed. You are his friend. You are chosen, meaning you're not an accident. You are forgiven. I know what you did hurt a lot of people, and you can't forgive yourself, but he's forgiven you. You are made by his hands which means he didn't make any mistakes. You are victorious. He's called you a victor, a winner. You are not alone. I feel like this is the type of message that the Holy Spirit's been screaming at us, but our lives are just way too loud for us to hear it. So I need you guys, I need you to receive today's message. You might have an unhealthy relationship with God, an unhealthy relationship with your spouse or your kids, and maybe even just an unhealthy relationship with yourself. But I have good news for those who have tried and are tired of unhealthy relationships. I have good news for those who are done feeling broken, and I have good news for those facing the hardest circumstances of their lives. It's this: if I got me here, he can get me out. These were my choices. I didn't choose some of these traumatic events that happened. But this is the choice, and I got me here. But I've tried to get myself out. And I'm here to tell you that this is a message of me in processing of overcoming this. And it starts with, I can't self-help my way to a healing. I need him. God says in 2 Chronicles 7:14, says, then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and will forgive them of their sins and restore their land. You could pray your way to God today, and he will tell you what you should think about yourself. Would you guys stand with me today? We're going to sing.